Kevin Hunter with Jeff O'Brien here on the Business Forum Show, and we're going to have some conversation around contract law and specifically all these boilerplate terms. So what's this whole story about boilerplates about?
Well, Kevin, it's interesting, these boilerplate terms, anybody that's out there listening that, when they ask their attorney, well, what is this or what is this in the contract? This is, they give you give your attorney some terms to put into a contract, and you come up with about a half a page or a page and a half of this stuff that you don't know where it came from, and the attorney always says, oh, that's just boilerplate. Well, what the heck is boilerplate? And it's interesting, this origin of this. Boilerplate is these standard contract provisions that apply equally in any kind of contract. And the origin of the term comes from way back in the turn of the 19th, going into the 20th century. It refers to a sheet steel that was used for making boilers, and this steel was used to make steel printing plates in the printing industry to print up those those widely distributed newspaper ads or syndicated columns, and they would send these plates all over the country to various newspapers so they could all use them. And that is how the term came about. Now, in the legal world, boilerplate refers to this whole set of contractual provisions. Usually you see them at the end of a contract. They might be under a section called general provisions or miscellaneous provisions, but they're all there. And there's about, there could be 8 to 10 of them or more that that you see at the end of the contract. And so we're going to talk about a few of them that you see over and over and over again so everybody can understand out there. So you don't have to go back to your attorney next time and say, what the heck is this? We're going to talk about what these different terms mean.
So let's drill into a couple of them here. Integration and further assurance or further acts in the contract. So let's talk about integration first. What is it?
Yeah, integration, you may see it may not necessarily say integration in the clause. You'll usually see like binding agreement or complete agreement might be the caption on the clause. And I brought one example here. We'll just read it. It says, the parties agree that this agreement is the complete and exclusive statement of the agreement between the parties, which supersedes and merges all prior proposals, understandings, and all other agreements, oral or written, between the parties relating to this agreement. Okay, so what does that mean? What it says is basically, we've negotiated this contract. There may have been phone conversations. There may have been in-person meetings. There may have been emails and texts back and forth. And now that we've committed this thing to a written document, this is the document. What happened in those emails doesn't matter. What happened in those phone negotiations doesn't matter. What happened in the text, regardless, this is the contract. You look at this. There's a rule of construction that if there's an ambiguity in a contract, you can go to outside evidence. It's called the parole evidence rule. So you still want to have a nice, tight, clear, unambiguous contract in terms of its provisions, but the idea behind this clause, and this clause helps with those types of issues in terms of, is this the complete agreement? Well, you've got a clause here saying it's the complete agreement. That's kind of a presumption that this is it. And so that's the importance of the integration clause, is it merges all the negotiations, all the prior discussions, all the communications, written or oral, into the contract.
So when you're talking about an ambiguity clause or ambiguity situation, like how ambiguous does something have to be before a court looks at a integration clause like this and says, well, this doesn't really apply, and now we need to clarify this issue?
It's this clause. Having this clause makes a big difference in terms of whether or not the court decides whether or not you have a complete agreement. Having a written clause saying this is the complete agreement helps. And this is, we've talked before on the show about why you want to try to solve things outside of court. Because the question you just asked, there is no hard and fast rule as to when the court decides if something is ambiguous or not. You don't want a third party deciding whether or not your contract is ambiguous or not. That's why you go hire an attorney and have it drafted, the right way, so that you don't have those kinds of problems. And you put clauses like, everybody says this is boilerplate stuff, it's taking up too much room in the contract. This is why you have it. It does mean something.
So when you start drafting a contract, this boilerplate, these last couple of pages in your contract should already actually be there.
Yeah. A lot of times, if my clients give me kind of the terms they've scrawled out on a napkin or in an email back and forth, they send me the terms. And when I put the contract together, I put together all their business terms first, and then I go get my set of boilerplate and put it in. It's not because I'm being paid by the word; it's because those little terms mean something.
So what about further assurance? What's this?
Further assurances is another important clause, and this is another example. It says, each of the parties shall do all such acts and things, and shall execute and deliver, or cause to be executed and delivered, all such documents, instruments, and agreements as may be necessary or desirable to give effect to the provisions of and intent of this agreement. Now you're looking at me saying, what in the world is that? What it basically means is if there's other acts or other things to be signed or done after this contract is signed to give effect to the contract, that the parties agree to do that. And I'll give you one example. If somebody is doing some financing and executes a security agreement where someone is given a security interest in certain property, could be hard assets, it could be stock, it could be whatever, you have to perfect a security interest. Sometimes that perfection is done by filing a document called a financing statement with the Secretary of State. Here, Minnesota, could be someplace else. If it's stock, the stock certificates have to be delivered to the secured party. So what a further assurances clause does in that situation is it obligates the parties to continue to do those steps to make sure that the security interest is properly perfected. Okay, that's where a clause like that helps. It could in a closing, it could be you have multiple documents, you need to have other things signed as a cleanup thing like that. That's what a further assurances, or otherwise known as a further acts clause, does. So again, another provision you look at and say, why do I need that? Well, if you don't have everything, it's a way of dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's.
And it's telling the two parties in the contract that they'll cooperate with each other.
Exactly. It's no different than saying that we'll cooperate to make sure that everything is buttoned up on the deal. Absolutely.
So we've only looked at two pieces here of some of what's on the boilerplate. There should be some indication to people here just how unsafe it is to consider DIY when it comes to contract law, but give your spin on that.
Well, absolutely. I always say that DIY equals SOL. I mean, there's, business people are smart people, and they know the business terms that they want to accomplish. You hire someone like me to use the right verbiage, and sometimes, does it put you to sleep reading it? Sure. But we try to do it as best as we can, and we put little provisions like these boilerplate provisions in there because they're time tested. They've been used over and over again, and they need to be in there to avoid problems down the road.
Kevin Hunter and Jeff O'Brien here on the Business Forum Show, chatting about some of the boilerplate terms in contracts and things to watch out for. Specifically today, we're integration and further assurance. We'll have others coming up here in the near future. Again, Kevin Hunter here on the Business Forum Show. You can find Jeff O'Brien at Loman.com. Stay tuned. We'll be back.